Wonderful. The yeses are coming through. Fantastic. On the good side, it means that everyone has had a chance to come in and join us and won't miss a thing. So, hi everyone, and welcome to the webinar. I'm your host, Kate Barrett, and I'll be shortly introducing and handing over again to Dr. Feldman. But first, I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to join us today. This is a live Q&A session with Dr. Feldman, so please do feel free to ask your questions in the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen at any point during the webinar, and we'll work our way through them in the Q&A section. Before we answer those questions, Dr. Feldman will talk you through some of the key elements of next year's conference and why you can't afford to miss out on attending, especially as it's via live stream. So even easier than ever for you to get involved and learn from Dr. Feldman. What I can tell you in advance is that 91% of last year's conference attendees said they would attend another medical legal consulting conference given by Dr. Feldman. And this year's was actually live streamed as well. And that the conference did an outstanding job of effectively addressing the stated learning goals. Now, for over 14 years, Dr. Feldman has consulted full-time to attorneys on all kinds of medical issues and questions. He's developed an entirely new kind of consulting approach and has trained over 950 physicians at one of his conferences. All of Dr. Feldman's consulting is pre-litigation, pre-trial, and helps attorneys manage the medical aspects of cases, increase case value, and save attorney time. Dr. Feldman helps attorneys to help their clients negotiate and settle cases and get the appropriate medical care the client needs. He doesn't participate in medical malpractice cases and does no expert witness work. So he's going to talk you through how you can get the systems, tools, medical knowledge, and practical guidance that you need to open up a whole new income stream without being beholden to a hospital, corporation, or other institution. So without further ado, please welcome Dr. Feldman.
Well, Kate, thank you so much. And thanks for doing such a great job over the years now as our webinar moderator. And thanks to all of you for joining us on this webinar. First, let me say, as Kate said, the April 2021 conference will be by live stream only. I also want to say it's just so great to have so many of you participating today. Hope all of you are safe, doing well, and staying healthy. We'll talk about the upcoming Medical Legal Consulting Conference and answer all of your questions about what this kind of consulting is really all about. I'm going to start with a few brief remarks, and then we will throw it open for your questions. As now I have to do this by hand here. Here we go. Okay, as many of you know, burnout is an increasingly serious problem for physicians, affecting over 50% of clinicians in some studies conducted before our current COVID-19 pandemic. In fact, I read in an interesting study that 1 of every 4 physicians is looking to do some non-clinical work, in part to ease the stress of today's clinical practice. In one survey that's just completed, more than 48% of physicians reported that since the COVID-19 crisis, they felt it necessary to seriously rethink their career or their practice. And the numbers are even higher for primary care physicians. About 50% of internal medicine doctors and as many as 55% of family medicine physicians reported they're seriously rethinking their careers or practice. I'm going to briefly discuss a non-clinical consulting opportunity that you can do full-time as part of your existing practice or in lieu of retiring. I'll tell you that I've found non-clinical consulting, specifically medical legal consulting, to be really interesting, fun, actually. I've worked out of a home office for the entire 14 years. I've done medical legal consulting, and I've done well over 3,000 interesting, rewarding, and lucrative cases. In fact, you're in the right place if you're looking for a great way to add to or to change your professional direction, and you want to learn about why you should attend the upcoming Medical Legal Consulting Conference, April 24th and 25th, 2021 via live stream. In fact, if you want to register now, you can call 303-619-0777. You can also register by clicking on the green Secure Your Spot button now button at the upper right corner of your screen. And I do want to mention that we still have an early bird discount on the conference tuition going on. It's currently $400 off the full tuition fee. Okay, before going on, let me just take a moment and let you know that medical legal consulting has not only been a great addition to my career, but to the careers of physicians who've attended past conferences. Listen to what Dr. James Kemmler has to say. For a handful of reasons, I decided to attend Dr. Armin Feldman's medical consultant course. In the first full year of starting this process as a part-time job, in addition to my orthopedic practice, we generated approximately $100,000. I'd like to thank Dr. Feldman for teaching this course and helping me to codify our process. Now, you can also, by the way, get a behind-the-scenes look on this slide of last year's temporary TV studio that was set up in our living room to produce the live stream TV broadcast. And we'll recreate that TV studio this year. So, in fact, whether you're interested in learning about a new way to use your hard-earned medical knowledge or a new way to find a lucrative addition to your practice or retirement, you've definitely come to the right place. I can tell you, in this age of constant change in the practice of medicine, physicians, after attending my conference, they've called me, they've emailed me with how this conference really helped to change their lives for the better, both in terms of practice satisfaction and in terms of wealth. And might sound too good to be true, right? But that's the repeated feedback I've gotten from doctors who've attended a past conference. And at this year's conference, you'll be able to directly question doctors using my system and hear about their experience doing this kind of work, as well as asking questions of our physician panel through the chat box during the live stream. So for the past 14 years, I've been a full-time medical consultant in legal cases. As Kate said, it's important to say I don't act as a medical expert and I don't participate in medical malpractice cases. There's a big difference between a medical consultant and a medical expert in legal matters. In fact, they're two completely different things. And you can learn how to be a medical consultant by participating in the conference. When doctors and lawyers think about lawyers hiring doctors, they only think of one thing, and that's hiring doctors to be expert witnesses. Over 14 years ago, I started, and now through the years have been refining a new branch of forensic medicine that involves working as a medical consultant in civil as opposed to criminal cases. All of this lucrative work, it's pre-trial, pre-litigation, and the work is not specialty specific. Any doctor in any specialty can learn to work as a medical consultant in legal cases. I answer any kind of medical question an attorney has in their ongoing cases, and you can too. In fact, I'll teach you exactly how to do just that at the conference. Now, this work is designed to help attorneys settle cases for better value with less attorney time. In all of our work, we're doing two things. First, we're helping attorneys negotiate and settle cases for better value. And we're helping attorneys get the appropriate medical care for their clients as well as helping attorneys negotiate the medical issues in their cases. I also want to say that the work is really rewarding. I'm helping people who would not have otherwise been afforded the medical consultation help that they really desperately need. All of our work is either in personal injury cases or workers' compensation cases, but I want to emphasize a doctor in any specialty can do this work, and I'll teach you how to do it at the conference. You'll leave the conference with the business and medical knowledge that you need, along with all of the tools required to profit long-term. In these areas of the law, personal injury and workers' compensation, approximately 9 out of 10 cases settle. In other words, the cases are negotiated and then a settlement is reached, and the case never goes to trial. So anything that we can do as a physician medical consultant, as opposed to a medical expert, to help attorneys negotiate and settle their cases for increased value with less attorney time is very, very appealing to many attorneys, actually to most attorneys. In fact, I am very rarely asked about my specialty. Attorneys are much more interested in knowing if my reports, medical opinions, and other services will help them to better negotiate and settle their cases. Now, obviously, if the case is going to court, in that 1 out of 10 cases for which you'll consult that doesn't settle, that is, the attorney will do depositions and go to trial, the attorney will need medical experts in every area of injury. But as you'll see during the conference, you'll be involved in those 9 out of 10 cases that are negotiated and settled. That is, where the attorney needs well-reasoned and researched medical opinions, reports, and other services that any good physician can learn to provide. So let's talk about what the conference is really all about. In other words, what we'll discuss, what you can earn, why attend this year, and who attends and why. Let's start with what we'll discuss. This conference is really about 2 things. First, how to start up and then successfully run your medical legal consulting business long-term, and that's day 1. Second, the conference is about the medicine that you need to know. That's most of day 2. So let's take a look at the actual course outline. So I'll start with an introduction to non-clinical work, adding to your paradigm. In other words, how do you make that leap to non-clinical consulting? Then I'll talk about what medical legal consulting is really all about. In great detail, I will go through the actual kinds of consults and services that you will provide. After the break, I'll come back. We'll talk about some small business principles for your medical legal consulting business that will improve your profitability and help you to run your business with less aggravation. Then next, my great friend, attorney John Ferris, will talk about what you need to know about the law, personal injury law, workers' compensation law, and the workings of attorney offices. Then after a lunch break, we'll get into the nuts and bolts. I'll give you a detailed step-by-step plan on how do you launch your medical legal consulting business. In other words, how do you go from 0 to up and running with your business? Up and running defined as now being in a position to go out and start soliciting attorneys for business. I'll follow that with another detailed step-by-step marketing plan to help you in 2 ways. First, how do you get your attorney clients? And second, how do you keep your attorney clients long-term? You can be the best plumber, the best medical consultant in the world, but if you don't maintain what marketers call top-of-mind consciousness, even your best customers are going to forget about you. So we'll talk about how do you market long-term as well. After the break, my great friend, Dr. Tom Moore from Birmingham, Alabama, will talk about his experience using my system and being in my training. And then we'll follow that with a physician panel discussion with several physicians around the country who are doing medical legal consulting and have been trained by me. After the break, I'll come back, and again, I'll give you a detailed step-by-step plan for how do you operate your medical legal consulting business on a day-to-day basis. Now, on day two, we'll start with what I call the 10-minute meeting. In other words, your initial meeting with an attorney prospect. And again, I'll give you a step-by-step plan for how to approach your attorney prospects. That'll be followed by Attorney John Ferris coming back and discussing how we as medical consultants, as opposed to medical experts, actually add value to legal cases. Many times that value is monetary value, but how we add value in many other ways, including how we make sure that these injured individuals actually get the medical care they need. That'll be followed by a video presentation of me actually doing a real 10-minute meeting with an attorney prospect. It wasn't staged. It wasn't edited. I asked this particular attorney, hey, do you mind if I bring a couple of videographers to the meeting? He was kind enough to say yes, so you can see how it's actually done. Then after the break, I'll talk about how do you write great medical legal reports. After lunch, we'll get into case studies. We'll talk about the most common kinds of conditions, injuries, and consultations that you'll do. We'll go over a number of different conditions that you would see on a routine basis. After that, I'll talk about understanding personality types for your medical legal consulting business, really talk about how do you communicate better with your attorney prospects. And the feedback over the years it has been that this has helped physicians just communicate better in their day-to-day lives. We'll then do our medical workshop, and then I will talk about what is it that you need to do next once you get home or once the conference is over. All right, now let's determine what you can earn. The way I've advised physicians over the years is do an informal survey of your colleagues. Determine what you think is the average fee per hour for doing medical expert work in your community. Now, obviously, there's a range, but it's really not that hard to figure the average. Once you know that average number for your local community, you want to come in somewhere between 50 to 75% of what or 2/3 of what the experts are charging. If you think about what that number actually is, I think you'll be very pleasantly surprised. Then just determine how many hours a week you want to devote to this, and it's easy to figure out what your income could be. All right, why attend this year? Well, you can still get in on the ground floor of this new field. Now, I've had the privilege and opportunity to train a number of doctors around the country. But if you think about it, there are 1 million MDs and DOs in the country. And I've only been able to train a handful, really a thimbleful of the physicians compared to that number. There is an extremely high demand for these kinds of services, and there are not enough physicians doing this work to fill that demand. It is not too late in the first wave. So, who attends? Well, doctors from any and every specialty, those physicians who want to start doing some non-clinical consulting, doctors looking to expand how they use their medical knowledge outside of clinical practice, and doctors looking to take back their autonomy. The slow death of private practice is upon us, and medical legal consulting is a way to get out from under just being an employee of a big corporation or hospital system, at least on a part-time basis if you so choose. And finally, doctors looking to do something new, full-time or those who want to do this as part of an existing practice, or those who want to do something interesting and lucrative in lieu of fully retiring. Okay, Kate, that is my introduction to what this is all about. I'd really like to answer your questions. And while I'm doing that, I think what I'll do is throw this slide back up on how to register. You can register by clicking on the green Secure Your Spot Now button or call that number on your screen. And I really do look forward to seeing you on the live stream. And remember, if you register now in November, you'll get a significant discount, $400 off the full registration fee. So let's throw it open for questions, and let's see what I can do to help you to understand this better.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Feldman. That was really interesting. And yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to next year's conference.
Right.
So there is a big green button on your screens, as Dr. Feldman said. If you click that, it will take you through to the website where you can see some more information and you can see our different ticket types. So Dr. Feldman, Neil has asked about cost. So do you want to talk through those two different ticket types and the cost of those at the moment with the early bird discount?
Right. So we have a basic registration fee, and currently, excuse me, currently that is $895. That is $400 over what the registration fee, the tuition fee, will be in a couple of months. And it's the tuition fee will go up each month from this month until after the first of the year. It'll be the full tuition fee of $1395. If you so choose, you can choose the VIP, which is an additional $300 on top of your tuition fee. And what that includes are extra sample reports, extra newsletters, extra tools, as well as 2 additional sessions with me. One Zoom session with other VIP members, and 1 individual session after that.
Wonderful. Thank you. So again, if you click the big green button, you'll be taken to the web page and you can see the layout of both of those different ticket types and what you get within each ticket as well.
So also, I would say one other thing, Kate, and that is when you get to the conference site, take a look at what other doctors have said about attending the conference. There are a number of comments from physicians that talk about having attended the conference and their experience.
Absolutely. So please do put your questions in the chat box on the right-hand side and we will answer your questions specifically. We have had some that have been sent in advance. So whilst you're thinking of your questions and putting those in, we will link into those. And Neil, you've actually asked a question that I was literally just about to put forward myself. So are there any territory restrictions to being able to do this kind of consulting? And what kind of competition is there?
Right. Are there any what kind of restrictions?
Territory subscriptions.
Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah,
so thank you, Kate. So every one of these medical legal consulting businesses is a local business by the nature of the business itself, by the nature of the marketing for the business, by the nature of your developing relationships and how you develop those relationships by personal interaction with the attorneys. Every one of these businesses is a local business. So, and as I said, in answer to the competition question, now, obviously, I've trained physicians. There are some physicians around the country doing this with great success and enjoyment. But the demand for these services is high, and there certainly aren't enough physicians in every city around the country to manage the demand. And one interesting thing that brings up is that The services that I offer and that you are going to offer, they are not standard operating procedure in the attorney offices until you meet with them, educate them, and make it so. So when you do that, you may get this kind of feedback. The attorney may say, "Well, I've never heard of a doctor doing this. It's not how I do things. I don't want to start now." But many of the attorneys, as I said, really most, they get it. They understand how these services will be valuable to them and their clients specifically, how it'll help to improve their bottom line and get the medical care that their clients need. And that's in fact, that's one of the reasons why every one of these businesses is a local business. It's based on establishing relationships with the local attorneys in your area. So there's still plenty of room to be quite successful with this kind of consulting. And let me just also say, as I said a minute ago, the work is really rewarding. It's always been important to me in my work that I know I'm helping people. And you get to see the tangible results of your work in terms of helping these injured people, injured no fault of their own, really. They're injured, obviously, to bring a case, either in a PI case or a workers' comp case. First of all, there has to be some negligence. So something has happened that negatively that has caused this person to be injured. And there have, for years, maybe for centuries, there have been physicians acting as medical experts, and many of them working for, or most of them really working for the insurance side. And this, with this kind of work, it's the first time that the injured person has actually had a doctor on their side. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to do anything that isn't straight up and unbiased, but there's always been doctors trying to minimize these kinds of things. There's never been doctors on the other side helping the attorney to get the legitimate damages as well as medical care for their clients. In fact, sometimes I'm asked about being some of the doctors ask me, well, are you just a hired gun? And one of the nice things about being on this side of the fence, that is working with plaintiff and claimant attorneys, is that these attorneys want and value our straight up medical opinions. In fact, these attorneys don't want to be carrying loser cases with their time and with their money. So they're certainly pleased to hear when you tell them how to handle a particular case with regard to certain medical injuries, but they're just as pleased to know when you let them know, hey, I don't think you have a case here for whatever the reason, if it's a pre-existing condition or if there may be malingering or the client is primarily driven by secondary gain or other issues. But it's one of the great things about doing this kind of consulting is you're never under some of the pressures that physicians that exclusively work for insurance companies face.
Fantastic. And that leads quite nicely into Rick's next question. And Rick asks, are there other potential areas of law other than personal injury or workman's comp?
Yeah, well, the key here is that one of the things that makes this consulting viable, makes it go, is that in these areas of the law, 9 out of 10 cases settle, and that's where we come in. So if a case is going to trial, no matter what the case is, a criminal case or even one of these cases, once the case goes to trial, the attorney is going to need to do depositions, hire retained experts and treating doctor experts, and use experts at trial. That's just the way our system works. But for the purpose of negotiating and settling the case, what the attorney needs are well-reasoned, well-expressed, well-researched medical opinions, reports, and other services. So let me just give you kind of an example. So when I started if somebody asked me now, what is your specialty? Well, not only did I start this kind of forensic medicine, but I've been doing it for 14 years. But when before that, my specialty was psychiatry and psychoanalysis. And I owned outpatient head injury rehabilitation clinics around the country, which I was fortunate enough to sell. After that, I was thinking about what to do next. I thought, well, maybe what I could do is just answer any kind of medical question in a case, and that turned out to be a great thing. So early, of course, this never happens to me now because all the attorneys and judges in my area know me. But when I started, let's say I did a case that had to do with a rotator cuff issue. Attorney hires me. I read the medical records. I interview the client of the attorney. I do the appropriate research, and I write a report. Well, the attorney sends that report to opposing counsel. Opposing counsel, what are they going to do? They're going to look me up. So they're going to come back and say to my attorney, well, why should we pay any attention to this? Dr. Feldman isn't an expert in rotator cuff injuries. And what my attorney says is, well, Dr. Feldman works as a medical consultant for me in all my cases, and I can tell you that if we can't get this issue related to the rotator cuff settled in the settlement, and you force me to take this case to trial, when I hire my retained expert is going to say exactly what Dr. Feldman said in his report. Dr. Feldman is relying on the same medical literature that my retained expert will rely on at trial. So let's get this settled. And that's how it works in a practical way. Now, of course, I've written thousands of reports by now, and that doesn't happen anymore. But what I do have to say in my reports and how they're backed up by evidence from the literature and so forth is effective to help these attorneys better negotiate and settle their cases. But you have to have cases that settle. And so that's the answer to your question.
Okay, Rick says thank you. And Neil has asked, are there additional costs other than ongoing conference fees in the future?
Well, every business has some startup costs, but what is quite remarkable about this business is the startup costs are ridiculously minimal. I mean, you need, everybody has a computer, you need to buy some domain names, you need to buy a little bit of software, but this business is driven by elbow grease. It is not driven by monetary expenses.
Wonderful. Neil says thanks as well. That's fantastic. So I think you've kind of already answered this, but just to recap, do you have to have a certain speciality to do this work or be board certified? You know, what do you need to actually be able to get started in terms of that experience?
Right. So that's a good question. It's asked of me quite often. And again, it goes back to what we are actually doing. And that is, we are helping the attorney through some very specific services that I'll teach you about to help them better negotiate and settle the case. So the way our legal system works, physicians are able to answer medical questions in legal cases. Now, that's just a fact in our legal system. Now, if the case, that 1 out of 10 that goes to trial, and typically those trials are in PI or in front of a jury, in a workers' comp, they're in front of an administrative judge. But at that point, you need experts for credibility. But for the purpose of negotiating and settling the case, medical opinions, along with the other things that we provide, are, in a technical sense, using the word technically, provide evidence that the attorney can rely on to what they call prove up their case. Obviously, in a legal case, there are a set of facts. Then each side looks at the facts of the case and develops their medical theories for the case. Then, we're working obviously on the or their theories for the case. We're working on the medical theories. Then they need to prove up those theories and based on the fact pattern. And one of the obviously the biggest ways that they do that is providing evidence. And our medical opinions are frontline evidence in the process of negotiating and settling cases, along with the other things that we provide in our reports and with our other services.
Wonderful.
So it doesn't really, I didn't answer the question. So it doesn't really matter what your specialty is. What matters is that you as a physician are able to render medical opinions backed up by evidence from the medical literature that is substantial and valid and used every day by attorneys around the country now to help them better negotiate and settle cases.
Brilliant. And just coming back to the costs question, is there any kind of insurance that's needed to be able to do this kind of consulting?
Yeah, that's a good question too. Question I'm often asked. So the bottom line answer on that question is if you are concerned about medical malpractice insurance for this purpose, the best thing you can do is hire an attorney in your state. Probably only take the attorney a couple of hours of time, and they should give you a written opinion as to whether or not you need medical malpractice insurance. Now, the other answer to the question is, first of all, I am not an attorney, but I don't think that you actually even need medical malpractice insurance for this purpose. What, at the bottom line, what we are asked to do is render medical opinions. So as long as you render that medical opinion in good faith, you read the medical records, you interview the client of the attorney, you do the appropriate research, you write a decent report. Even if the attorney didn't like your opinion, which doesn't really happen, but even as if you were hired to render a medical opinion, you do it in good faith. Very difficult to sue somebody for doing what you asked them to do. Now, of course, anybody can sue anything for any reason, but all of my clients are attorneys. They certainly know how to sue people. And of the 3,000 plus cases that I've done, I never say never, right? But I've never even come close to a sniff of anyone threatening to sue me based on what I just said.
That's always good to know.
Right.
So when somebody comes out of the conference, when they leave the conference, will they be ready to go and start consulting to attorneys, or is there a little bit of a learning curve post-conference that they've got to go through to get all of this set up?
Right. So you're starting a small business, just like starting any other small business. So the very first thing that you need to do is you need to implement the business launch plan that you'll learn about at the conference. Is absolutely step by step. First do this, next do this, then do that, and you'll get through those steps. And that will take you from not having a business at all to having a viable business structure. And by the time that you finish that launch plan, you will now have a business and you will actually be in a position to start asking. Oh, Jesus. Are you back? Hello?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
It was me. All of a sudden, my computer went black, and now it just restarted. I have no idea what happened.
But
that's
okay. We're still here.
Okay, so now you are in a position to start soliciting business from attorneys. What you will get at the conference is, in addition to training on a whole variety of other things, is all of the tools that you need, both business and medical, to now go out and actually do this work. When you finish one of the very first things that I say at this conference, and have been saying for the past 7 years, when you leave this conference, you will have all of the tools and all of the instruction necessary to actually go out and do this on completion of this conference.
Wonderful. Okay, so just a reminder, if you do have any last questions for Dr. Feldman, please do put them in the chat box on the right-hand side. I've got just a couple more that have been sent in advance, so you've got a couple more minutes to pop those in there. In terms of the amount of time that is needed to devote to this after the conference, is it a full-time job, a part-time job? How does it work from
Yeah, that's also a great question. Excuse me. And the answer is you need at a minimum about 8 hours a week in order to do this justice and make it fly. If you don't have 8 hours a week, don't do it. But that's the minimum. And then you can have a perfectly viable, lucrative consulting business at 8 hours a week. Most physicians may start at that or start at a little bit more than that. They start getting clients. And now it's not an exact science, but you can pretty much regulate how many hours you're going to work doing this by assessing the actual attorneys that are in your referral base. You'll see, oh, this guy's going to refer once a week. This woman may refer to me 3 times a year. But it doesn't take long to get a sense based on the specific attorneys in your specific referral base, how many of them you're going to need in order to work the number of hours that you wish to work. Now, there are physicians that do this full time. There are others that do it in lieu of retiring. But the largest group, far and away, the largest group are physicians that do this on a part-time basis as part of what they're already doing as part of their existing practice.
Wonderful. And does the conference supply CME credits?
Yeah, the conference supplies 15 Category 1 CME credits.
Wonderful. So Rick has asked, what would the expected income be at 8 hours a week?
So it goes back to what I said earlier. Determine what you're going to charge per hour. Determine the number of hours you're going to work per week and multiply the number.
Fantastic. Okay. So with the world the way that it is and everything going a bit crazy with the COVID-19 pandemic, what kind of consulting can be done during this pandemic? So if, heaven forbid, it is carrying on into next year, is this kind of work flexible? Can you do it without actually meeting people face to face? Or how does that work in this kind of situation?
Right. Good question. So before the pandemic, it was my strong suggestion and recommendation that, for example, you do your initial meeting with attorneys face to face in their office. Well, that's not practical right now. So, excuse me, I had to get something in my throat. So, what we have gone to with great success by physicians all over the country is doing that initial meeting by Zoom meeting. And then whether you do your first meeting in person or you do your first meeting by Zoom meeting, most everything thereafter takes place by telephone, email, Zoom meeting, and US mail. So once you do that first meeting and you get your client in your referral base, your interview with 95% of the time, the interview that I interview the client in every case, but 95% of the time, I'm doing that interview by phone or more recently by Zoom meeting. And your research, your review of records, everything can be done remotely. As I said, I've worked out of a home office the entire time I've done this. Now, for marketing purposes, it's always good to get personal and face-to-face with your clients. But unfortunately, nobody is doing that now, but we certainly have ways to work around that. So I will say that when we had the massive shutdown last March and people were just staying in their homes, obviously there were less work-related accidents, there were less auto accidents and other kinds of personal injury situations. But now, since that complete shutdown, there have, in all parts of the country, the work for the attorneys and subsequently the work for us has come back.
Fantastic. That's good to know. So we haven't got any other questions in the chat box. So why don't we wrap up with your key reasons as to why somebody should attend the conference next year? You know, what are those key things in summary that they're going to get out of coming along to the live stream?
Right. So as I mentioned right at the beginning, this study that I saw where 1 in 4 physicians is looking to do some non-clinical work. So doing medical legal consulting, I can tell you, for me, it's been really interesting. It's been quite lucrative. I've learned a tremendous amount of medicine. I feel I'm certainly a better and more well-rounded doctor than I was before. And it's been a pleasure to do this work. I know I'm helping people every time I touch a case. And so if you are looking to do something a little different, or if you're looking to do something a little different, or if you want to add some income to what you're doing and you want to do something that is meaningful, that helps people, that is fascinating to you do, that where you can use your hard-earned medical knowledge in a way that is rewarding and meaningful, then here is a ready-made, just do the steps and do it. If you just follow the recipe, this will work for you. This has worked for physicians all over the country. And you'll hear from some of those physicians at the conference. So it is personally gratifying. It's personally lucrative. It gives you something to do in addition to or to replace some of your clinical time. It is certainly less stressful than that, and it is enormously rewarding as well. So that's why you should do this. And why you should do it now is the interesting thing that's happened over the years. When I first started promoting my training, the biggest thing I probably had to overcome was skepticism, right? Was I a snake oil salesman? Now, I'm pleased to say that what I started has really turned into a new subspecialty of forensic medicine. There are more and more physicians around the country doing this. Eventually, I suppose we'll get to a point where there are enough physicians to handle the demand. That certainly isn't where we are now. So I hope that answers that question.
It does indeed. Thank you. That was a great roundup. And just to remind everyone, if you haven't already secured your spot on next year's live stream conference, please make sure you do that now so you can secure that extra early bird discount and save $400 off the ticket price. It's not to be missed for the price and for the content that you're going to get and what it's going to give you after the conference. So it's April 24th and 25th, 2021. It is via live stream. And if you want to secure your spot, you can click the big green button on the right-hand side of your screen, or please call now on 303-619-0777. And we would absolutely love to see you at the conference next year.
Absolutely. So thank you, Kate. And thank all of you for participating. If you have further questions, you know how to get a hold of me. Happy to answer them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Feldman, and thank you to our audience for coming along to today's webinar and for your questions as well. We hope to see you at the conference.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too.